So lastly, let's talk about VO2 max testing. VO2 max and VO2 submax, I guess I should address them both, is basically the rate at which oxygen comes into your body and is utilized. As I'm breathing during exercise, I'm taking in a certain amount of oxygen into my lungs, but only a portion of that is being used and actually makes its way into the muscles so that way my body can perform. People that have high VO2 maxes, people that can perform at very high levels, don't get fatigued quickly as other people. So it's kind of the whole being in shape, right? Nobody wants to climb a flight of stairs and 5 minutes later still be out of breath. That would be a very low score in a VO2 max, for an example there for you. But what we can do is say, just because this person has low body fat, has a good metabolism, doesn't mean that they have good cardiovascular fitness. It's a great way for us to be able to incorporate the whole picture together. Because as a person now exercising, the last thing you want to do is set yourself in a position where you're not factoring all these things together, but once again, customized for yourself. During exercise, again, the blood and the oxygen get to the muscles. If it takes a long time and or your body doesn't get enough oxygen to the muscles, you start to cramp up, you feel fatigue, some people get lightheaded, and can eventually pass out. It can take 12 times as much oxygen for the cells in your brain to function. So that's why you don't want to get those feelings, but it also makes sense why when you have somebody first starting an exercise routine, why they have these problems. And we want to be able to help them make the transition into exercise. Because as we all know, the first day starting a workout routine isn't always easiest. And if you can tell that person, maybe your zones for training today, and I'll talk about heart rate zones in a second, should be at a lower level versus, why don't you get on that treadmill and show me everything you got, you're probably going to help that person feel better about themselves, which will make them want to come back as well. So let's talk about heart rate zones. Heart rate zones are basically, as my heart rate goes up, how much oxygen is being delivered to my body, right? And as you and I may know, or may not know, when you cross a certain point of your heart rate zones, say that number is 150 beats a minute, what happens is your body goes from burning fat to burning carbohydrates. And what we're looking at is this line I'm drawing is the amount of oxygen that your body takes in. You'll know what it feels like because all of a sudden you start to breathe a lot heavier. Okay? Your body can no longer get the oxygen into the blood, into the muscles quick enough, so what it has to do is shift energy systems and start burning carbohydrates in the form of glycogen stored in your muscles. That's why you get that labored fatigue. Some people call it the lactic acid burn, the burning in your muscles, whatever you want to call it. But that number can be very important because if you have, again, one of my athletes coming to me saying, last race I completely bombed, which means failed, what happens is they went way too fast too soon, right? Their body wasn't providing the oxygen to the muscles fast enough. They burned through their glycogen, meaning their short-term energy storage, and then they basically ran out of juice. And it's a race, so you can try to get energy in as fast as you want. You have all the electrolyte drinks in the world, but typically what happens is it takes a couple days to replace that. So we want to, not only with beginners, help them with the transition into exercise, teach them these are the proper training zones for you to utilize your fat burning. These are the proper training zones for you to maximize your cardiovascular fitness, as well as for the elite athletes say, hey look, this is exactly the number you need to stay underneath to be able to function at your optimal levels. This number that I'm talking about, this optimal training heart rate zone, is called your anaerobic threshold. And the reason why I call it your optimal training zone is because this is a point where your body switches from burning fat to carbohydrates. And that can be very important if you're an athlete or just an average person, because if this was your heart rate on a line, continuum, you're getting far more oxygen into your body as this number climbs. So your anaerobic threshold is the point at which your body goes from burning your fat storage, where most of us have too much, into where we're burning carbohydrates, where you have a very limited source, right? Your glycogen, your stored carbohydrates, for most people are around 2,000 calories. Your fat storage, whether or not you want to admit to this, can be into the hundreds of thousands of calories. So for an athlete, we're trying to have them either train in a very low zone for a marathon runner that's trying to establish a baseline, or we're trying to have them train just underneath that cardiovascular anaerobic threshold so that they're not burning their short-term energy, they're burning their fat. right? And when you're actually in a situation, say a sprinting perspective, we're working more on intervals. So you're going from a high to a low, but we want to try to, in a training environment, maximize these results so that you're not guessing and going back and forth if it's unwanted. We're finding what is the number that I do not cross, what are my zones if I'm trying to go back and forth intentionally, or what is the optimal level for me to be building my baseline off of. As your VO2 max improves, your body's becoming more efficient, you're going to have more energy throughout your day, you're going to feel better, and you're also going to be a lot less likely to fatigue. People that have extremely high VO2s do not get tired. And with this new craze of mixed martial arts, for example, that would be a great thing for somebody to know, because if you are a fighter and your VO2 max sucks, it doesn't matter if you're cutting weight, you're still going to gas out. I can remember an example I saw recently of a gentleman who was extremely in shape. I mean, this guy had ultimately no body fat, so he was obviously eating the right way. And then within 30 seconds of the fight, he gassed out and ended up losing because the gentleman, who didn't look like he was in shape at all, had a much better conservation of his energy. So just an example of something, but just another way for you to kind of understand with VO2 max testing what we're measuring. We're measuring the efficiency of your body's oxygen utilization. So as with resting metabolic rate using calculations, there is problems in VO2 if you don't measure it, you're just guessing. The average person, and I've heard women especially, can be 10 to 15 beats above or below your measured calculation. So if I'm plugging my formula in, my age, my height, my weight, my body fat percentage, all these variables, and I'm actually 15 beats over what it's recommending me for my anaerobic threshold, I could be training at 150 beats a minute, and really I should be at 175. That could be bad. Even worse situation would be I'm assuming I'm 150 beats a minute, and I'm actually supposed to be at 135. Without getting too much in the details of it, again, you're looking at fat storage versus carbohydrate. So one of the examples I use is if you're a triathlete and you're 15 beats out of your zone for optimal speed, you're going to be either going way too fast and you're going to crash out, lose to your friend, whoever you made a bet with, or you're going to be going way too slow and you could actually overperformed your best time. You could have done so much better. So we're really trying to, again, maximize the speed at which individuals can train, the results at which they can get to where they want to be at. And another thing we want to try to do is make sure that we don't send somebody into a situation where they're going to end up with problems. Again, there's very limited glycogen in your body, and at training those high levels of energy, heart rate, you're going to run out much faster. You don't believe me? Go try to sprint for 5 minutes and watch what happens. So, now with this information you have, you can see how these three forms of measurement, body composition testing versus just looking at your weight, your metabolism speed, along with the calorie needs that you have, along with measuring your cardiovascular fitness, can greatly enhance not only your program design, but also your lifestyle. We're talking about enhancing the speed at which you get to your goals. No longer do we have to sit there and go on the internet and look for equations and try to guess things out. Just like with all the technology nowadays, you have this available for yourself to go out there and make some changes. So let's go out and do that. Let's try to streamline our bodies and live a healthier lifestyle. Thank you again for listening to my presentation. My name is Craig Sanchez. I look forward to hopefully talking to you soon.